Get started? Yeah, okay. Cool. Hey everyone, welcome to this talk. My name is Prakhar, and I'm super excited to share with you about Project IDX. It's a project at Google that we've been building for the past couple of years, and I'm really excited to share with you all as developers on how you can use AI to boost your developer productivity. Okay, before we get started, quick show of hands. How many developers in the audience? Oh, that's nice, sweet, okay. How many front-end engineers? Front-end, I see a couple of hands, okay. I'm assuming everyone else is largely back-end or mobile? Back-end engineers, back-end? Okay, sweet. And what about mobile? iOS, Android, Flutter? Nice, looks like you do everything, that's great. Yeah, full stack. Sweet, cool. And one more question before we get started. How many of you have heard of Project IDX? Okay. Nice, couple of people, okay, sweet. So let's get started. So in the interest of full disclosure, I had a bunch of amazing demos prepared, right, that would need internet, but unfortunately due to technical difficulties, we are on a static slide. But then again, if you have any questions on any of this stuff, please feel free to raise your hand, and we don't have to wait towards the end of the talk for questions. I want it to be interactive, right? This is like a developer speaking to other developers on what we can do to improve the state of building apps using and improving developer productivity with or without AI. Okay, so what is Project IDX? So Project IDX is a full stack app developer environment. It is cloud hosted. It has AI assistance, obviously, right? And it is actually very, very cool. Who am I? My name is Prakhar. I'm a staff software engineer at Google. I've been at Google for around 8 years, and basically developer productivity has been my thing for my entire career. I'm very fascinated with building tools and services that improve lives of developers. So developers like me, developers like you. Before working on IDX, I was on Firebase. Any Firebase users? Nice, yes, I was on Firebase, worked on a bunch of services before I transitioned on to Project IDX to take a look at how can we improve developer productivity inside the IDE. Okay, so before we jump off here, quick show of hands, what are people's favorite, just shout it out, people's favorite IDEs that they use? VS Code, okay, I heard VS Code. Somebody said Cursor. Cursor, okay. What else? Z, oh, fancy. Nice. Anything else? IntelliJ, nice, yeah. Wait, no Vim or Emacs? Come on, guys. We're too young. Nice, nice, that's a good one. Okay, so yeah, huge swath of IDEs out there, right? And it's a tall order to tell any developer, hey, you know what? Change your IDE to something else, right? Nobody's gonna, like, I love my IDEs. To be very honest, I had like a 1,000-line Vim RC with all my extensions and customizations and key bindings committed to heart. And so I'm very familiar with, okay, why would you want me to use a new IDE? Well, I'm going to try to talk to you on how some of the things, how Project IDX can help with some of the problems that you're facing today. So what is Project IDX? So Project IDX is web-based, right? You can see at the top, idx.google.com. It's a workspace that is installable as a progressive web app. It's a URL. It has deep Google integrations. We'll get to some of those, why these are useful and why it might be something that you'd be interested in. It's designed for collaboration, which I think is like super valuable. Think of it like Google Docs, but for programming, right? Where you can invite your collaborators, your friends to debug something, to pair program. It's AI enabled. Has Gemini support built in that is fine-tuned for code, ready to help you in making you a more productive developer. It's built on top of VS Code. I heard a huge number of people here already use VS Code, so you want developers to feel comfortable with the tools that they already have. It has live preview, which means one less thing to configure when you're building your front end, back end, your mobile app, and it comes with a full-fledged cloud VM. So it means that you have a full terminal that you have access to, you can run terminal commands, you can install stuff, you can delete stuff. It's basically a VM that you can do whatever you want to. Just the same way you would do on your local laptop that you do. Okay, so let's quickly take a step back and talk about what makes software development hard, right? Think about the last time you debugged something. Can someone shout out a few things that they do when they get stuck on a problem or they're trying to debug a compiler error or like a bug or something? Just, sorry? Pull hair out, yeah, absolutely. The other could be look at Stack Overflow for some of my, to debug my error. Anything else? LLM, yes, ask an LLM, please help me. Absolutely. What else? Documentation, that's a nice one. Yeah, look at documentation. What else do we do? Discord. Interesting, okay. Brute force, yes. Brute force, aka printf debugging, right? Yeah, printf debugging for the win. What else? Breakpoint debugging, absolutely. Yeah, we add breakpoints in our code and walk through some of those steps and see the stack trace and see what the variables are doing, right? So there's so much stuff to do. So you're asking an LLM, you're looking at Stack Overflow, you're doing printf debugging, breakpoint debugging if you're really cool, right? And there's so many things to do when you get stuck. And so you might be thinking, this is hard, right? And I'm definitely not paid enough to do this. Software development is hard, as I'm sure everybody here who does development agrees. Can we do something about this? And that is sort of the question that the Project IDX team sort of started asking each other, is how can we help to make development slightly more fun, slightly more interesting, and slightly more productive, given the huge amount of things developers have to do on a daily basis, right? So IDX is basically our attempt at what a productive development environment could look like. It's obviously not perfect, but these are some of the things that we as developers feel that we can improve slowly and steadily for developers to make it more easy for you to build your applications. Okay, so let's go over some of the things that we feel are super useful. So the first one is the power of web-based IDEs. So like I said, I'm a huge, still am, not was, yeah, I'm a huge Vim fan. I would install Vim configurations, NeoVim, and trying out all of those things. So I was definitely skeptical of web-based IDEs, right? But being on web does come with a lot of benefits. And so one of those benefits are getting up and running very quickly, right? So let us say you're creating a new project, a new React app, or a new Go app, or a new Rust application, right? It's rather than setting up the environment on your local system, which depending on the toolchain of choice, your language of choice, can take hours to minutes, right? Or you're importing your project from Git-based repo. IDX has the right environment for you to set up in less than a minute. So if you see on the right, you'll see that we have a couple of templates, a Python web server, which is like a Flask server or a Django template, or a BART plugin or a Gemini plugin. And then on the right, you see here that this is some of the configuration that we provide out of the box. So for example, this is saying, give me Node.js installed, give me Firebase tools installed, and start my HTTP server on a port. So rather than you configuring all of this, our templates come with all of this pre-configured. And so all you have to do is, if you want a Rust project to start, or a Go project, just click a button, and then you have environment set up. You don't have to look at any documentation to even get started for any of those languages or frameworks. Okay, and these are all the templates, all the languages, frameworks that we support. I want to keep this here for a few seconds and ask people to call out if this does not support anything that they use today, or they would like to see something here that is not already here. Sorry? Hugo, yeah, the static server, the static file server, the static templating engine in Go, right? Yeah, nice, yeah. Definitely worth adding. Hugo is super popular. What else? Anyone heard of Dino? Show of hands, heard of Dino? Nice. We do have a Dino template. This is not updated, so sorry about that, but we do have a Dino template, especially Dino 2, which is really fun for developers to try. I don't see. Elixir, yeah. Elixir and the Phoenix framework, right? Yeah, that'd be fun to add. Yeah, great point. I'll get back to my team, and hopefully we can add a Elixir and Phoenix. iOS, Swift, yes. Cool. Yeah, so as you can see, we have a bunch of templates, and almost every stack that you can think of is here. And some of the really interesting responses around Hugo, around Elixir, about Swift. And the best part here is that you don't have to be dependent on a team at Google to bring you your framework. All of our template sort of creation language and the DSL that provides that we export is all open source. So we have a GitHub repository where you can see all of these templates, how they're configured, and I would encourage you to come talk to me and I can help you out with, you can start contributing your language of choice. So if you are an Elixir fanboy or fangirl, right? Yeah, please feel free to add, I'll tell you how to add that. So I think that's the main takeaway that I have from this, is that IDX is very, very flexible. It's supposed to be your environment. You can do anything you want. You can install any stuff you want. But we do come with a few bells and whistles to make it as easy and streamlined as for you as we can. OK. And so like I said, web-based IDEs, with that also comes the power of throwaway environments. So IDX workspaces, like I said, can be spun up in seconds. And what that means is, let us say there's a new shiny JS framework released, and you're like, hey, let me just try out my counter app or my to-do app in this new fancy JS framework. Rather than setting up everything, going through the documentation, you can spin up a workspace in seconds, have everything ready to go, try it out, and then delete the workspace, right? Without contaminating or necessarily polluting your local environment with a bunch of NPM node modules that you didn't have. Now, node modules or NPM is pretty good at having project level dependencies, but think about something like Python, where you're installing, if you don't use virtual environments, or any other language where you're installing global dependencies, you don't want all of that on your local setup. So IDX workspaces can be spun up in seconds, and you can have separate environments to prototype, build, and experiment with like various frameworks and ecosystems. So what you see here is a React app, right? This is a React Hello World, a counter app, which is using Vite as a build system of choice. And you can see that the preview is ready to go. You don't have to run a server. You don't have to navigate a local host URL in a separate tab and do back and forth. Everything is right here. And the best part here is, if I make a change, and this was, like I was saying, I had live demo prepared. But if you had a live demo, I could go in the code here, and where it does count equal to count plus 1, I could do count equal to count plus 2, hit count, and it'll automatically hot reload and work without needing any changes, right? And you get this out of the box with React, Angular, all the front-end libraries, even the back-end libraries, or even the back-end frameworks. So we support hot reload, full restart, hot restart, and what that allows you to do is experiment with code, and the preview server sort of updates in real time to show you how you're building. So it's super helpful in building APIs, and obviously front-end, and even mobile applications. And like I said, it can be a throwaway environment. Even though it is throwaway, can be very powerful. It does not have to be somewhat very lightweight. So think of a use case where you're on a Chromebook, you're a student, you're a Chromebook, and you don't have a powerful enough Mac or a Windows or a Linux machine to run the new LLM model, or to run a full stack Java Spring framework and a Docker container and a Postgres database on your local environment, right? So you can use IDX even in that case. We come with a fully integrated terminal, and the workspaces that mimic your local environment. You can install a package, you can modify a file, you can just go ahead, right? And there's a full VM that backs every workspace. We are working on giving users the ability to choose even beefier workstations as we go forward. But as of now, you get a good enough machine where you have enough RAM to run a couple Docker containers and a Java or a Django template right within the VM. One of the cool things that we have in Project IDX, which I wish my local Mac had, is that I say I'm trying out this new terminal utility that have people heard of ripgrep or like a silver searcher? So these tools are basically grep, which is a utility that you would use to search through code on steroids. I think one of them is written in Rust. I love using ripgrep to go through my code base and searching for like function names and keywords. On my local Mac, if I go type ripgrep on the terminal, it'll say command not found, right? If I've not installed anything. On IDX, though, if you go in the terminal and say ripgrep command not found, ripgrep and enter, it'll show you command not found, but it'll also show you how to install. And you can just press up and down on keyboard, press enter, and it'll install it for you. So you don't even have to worry about, hey, where do I get ripgrep from? Or if any other tool or package of choice. Let us say there's a new Java version released or new JDK. You want the latest JDK, you say JDK 23 or 25, hit enter, and it'll get JDK installed right on your machine without you wondering, hey, where do I get it from? So for example, if I don't have a PHP compiler installed on my Dino workspace, it says PHP is not installed, but available in the following packages. I can choose which version I want, hit enter, and boom, there's PHP ready to go on my VM, and I can start building PHP apps. I didn't have to look up how to download PHP, how to set anything. So all this is like very transparent. And if anybody has done this before, they know how much And depending on the language and the framework, how much time this can take, right? Cool. And then the next up is a familiar coding environment. Like I said, developers love their IDEs. It's our our daily driver to be productive at our workplace, at our jobs, at our projects. And so asking somebody to give up their IDE to come to try a brand new IDE is obviously a very tall order. And so one of the things we wanted to do here is have a familiar coding environment, an environment that developers already know, that they use, that they love, and don't have to spend days on understanding, hey, where do I get the status bar from, or how do I run a command, or any of those things that developers do, right? And so we are built on top of CodeOSS. CodeOSS is the open source version of VS Code. It is distributed by Microsoft, and that's what we use. And what that means is that you can bring all your favorite extensions that you're already used to on your local environment, right? And so, for example, there's a Vim plugin that I use in IDX to get my Vim bindings working. And you can install Prettier or any of the extensions that you have that you already know and love on VS Code, right, within Project IDX. Just search, install, and everything is ready to go. Cool. So, for example, like I was saying, so I can go search for Vim, and these are all the Vim plugins that are already existing, the Vim extensions, and I can use the one that is the most supported and the most popular. Cool. Next up is pre-connected and batteries included. Like I mentioned before, setting everything up is a big part of learning any new language or framework of choice, and not even new. Even if you're getting started on your project, at any new project, the first thing is the setup environment takes a lot of time, right? And one of the things that we do here is try to make the setup as easy as possible. So if you're a new PHP developer or a new Rust developer or Go developer, you don't have to worry about how do I set up all the environment paths on my local system. You can just create a template and get started. So here, if you see, we have an integrated live preview, and you can become instantly productive with a hot reloading environment right within the IDE. So let's do a quick recap. So we have workspaces that spin up in seconds. They are ephemeral, which means that they can be created and deleted on demand, but they are also insanely powerful. You have access to a full-fledged VM, a full-fledged terminal that you can install batteries, you can install dependencies. They come with a familiar editor, aka CodeOSS or VS Code. You can install the extensions that you want, you can install the plugins, you can change the themes the same way you use on your local setup, and then you can become immediately productive with an integrated preview that gives you cool things such as hot reloading, preview sharing, and some of the other things the same way you would have on your local environment. Okay, so next, let's talk about the power of reproducible dev setup. So let's paint a scenario. Let us say you are joining a new company, new startup, right? And as a new joinee, one of the first things they tell you to do is, hey, take 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, depending on the company that you're in. Get your environment ready, get your environment set up, right? Or let us say you want to contribute to this amazing new open source library, let us say LangChain or JS, and you're like, oh, let me go to the README to do the developer setup first, and only then I can get the environment running to even start running things and start contributing. What we try to do in Project IDX is to minimize that toil that is required on building stuff up and getting the environment up and running. And the way we do that is through something called Nix. Anyone heard of Nix? Nice. People are familiar with Nix. And what we have in Project IDX is built with Nix or built on top of Nix to give you a very nice DSL, which is like a domain-specific language called dev.nix that allows you to bring your dependencies, set up your environment in a way that is comfortable and familiar to you. So as you can see here, is the font visible or is it too small? Too small? Sorry, I don't think I can. Oh, I can. Sweet. How about now? Better? Okay. So let's do a quick walkthrough of what this means, right? So we are using the Nix stable channel as of 2305. We tell IDX that these are my packages. So for example, I'm telling it, give me Firebase tools, give me Node.js, and give me Python 3.8. And these are the extensions I want already installed in my environment. So I want the Svelte VS Code extension, and I also want the Volar extension, and configure a preview for me. And basically, what the preview is doing, it is running this command called npm run dev on a port, and this is what you have ready here. As long as your project has a dev.nix file, Project IDX will read that dev.nix file, build the environment for you, and have everything ready to go that you can basically get started immediately. So now to onboard somebody on this app, you don't have to tell them, hey, you know what, install Firebase tools, install Node.js, install Python, and then install these extensions, and now you can run a preview, and that's how you get started. No, you just give them a dev.nix file, or give them a project that has a dev.nix file. They open in Project IDX, and boom, they have everything ready to go. They don't even have to know, how do I install Python 3.8, right? Because it's just like one line here, like line number 6. You get Python 3.8 right directly within Project IDX. So that's one of the ways where we are thinking about how we can reduce the developer toil by making environments configurable. Sorry, I'm using the preview for slide share, and I'm not super familiar with it. Let me see. Okay, cool. So that's a quick overview of the dev.nix file that Project IDX uses to give you reproducible environments with Nix. Yeah, like I said, Nix files are defined and define the environment, and it works the same on all machines. I think one of the most common developer issues is, hey, it works on my machine, right? Why is it not working for your machine? Or anything along those lines. And the idea here is to sort of get away from that and say, hey, I have an environment that is reproducible. As long as you have a dev.nix file, you can get the exact same environment that I have. Sweet. So we looked at reproducible dev environments. Let's quickly talk about the power of shareable environments. One of the things I talked about earlier is how collaboration is at the heart of Project IDX. And we feel collaboration is really, really important. So our team itself was formed during COVID, where we were all a remote team at Google, which means we were constantly collaborating, asking people for, hey, here's a quick VC link. Please jump on and help me share this code. And tools at Google are in some cases pretty good, but in some cases also not excellent for collaboration. As for developers, for things like slides, for docs, for everything else, it's amazing to collaborate with other non-technical/technical folks. But within engineering itself, it somewhat gets really hard. And with Project IDX, that's what we want to do, is to make it super easy for you to add your coworkers or your friends. So if you see here, what I can do is I can bring up a dialog. It says workspace sharing, and I can add people here from my contacts list, and I can share this workspace. And what that does is it gives them the access to this workspace. And then they can come here, and you all can edit multiple files. They can see the terminal. They can see the stack trace that you're running into and help you debug or pair program. So obviously, this is very good for like interviewing, but for way other like different applications. If you're collaborating with someone or you're helping an open source project, you can ask their maintainer, hey, here's my workspace, please help me debug. And you don't have to be on the workspace at the same time. You can all take a look at it independently. They can write files, they can read files, they can make any changes as they would if they have your environment. And given it is ephemeral and sandbox, you don't have to worry about, oh, can they look at my other projects? No, it's only tied to this workspace and this workspace alone. So you get this sense of security that, okay, this is the workspace that I'm sharing, and I can obviously remove them if the need arises. So this is something that's super useful. We've been using this quite a lot to debug, and yeah, it makes things really interesting and collaboration much more fun rather than sharing screenshots to each other and random GVC links. Cool. Let me see. Okay. Right. So let's do a quick recap. So we are built on top of Nix, which brings reproducible environments, and we have sharing and collaboration, which allows your colleagues, your friends to come in and debug. Now, I want to caveat that our collaboration story is still sort of very nascent. We are still working on it. There are a lot of things to improve on: real-time debugging, real-time collaboration, sharing the terminals where you run ls and the user and the person you're sharing with also sees the files at the same time. So there's a lot to do there, but I would really encourage you all to try, give us feedback on how we can improve collaboration and make it so that the same way you don't think about Google Docs or any other enterprise such twice before sharing, we want the same thing to be for workspaces, where you can share code with friends and family or with your colleagues to help you debug as easily as possible. Okay, so now let's quickly jump into mobile development. I know there were a couple of hands when I asked how many folks do mobile development. Another question, are folks familiar with Flutter? Okay, 1, 2, 3, oh, quite a few, nice. So Flutter is sort of our framework of choice for mobile development. We also have React Native and Expo, but I'm going to take a few seconds to talk about mobile development. Now, mobile development is really hard. I'm a full stack engineer myself. I've dabbled in both Android and iOS development, and it's really, really hard, right? When Flutter came, I was super excited. Okay, now we have like one code base to rule them all. I don't have to worry about learning Kotlin or learning Swift. But the challenge is that if you've onboarded to Flutter, you know how long it takes to get everything set up. Now it's getting better and better every single day, but the installing an Android toolchain or the iOS toolchain, given on the environment, given whether on Mac or Windows, it's considerably time consuming. And I think you can spend in the order of 2 hours to get anything up and running with Flutter. But once you're up and running, you're off to the races. So our goal with Project IDX was to bring up mobile emulators and spin up a Flutter environment within seconds, right? So what you see here is actually a fully functioning Flutter app that is using an Android. Let me zoom in so we can all see. Okay, yep, yeah. So what we have here is a fully functioning Flutter Hello World scaffolding, which is the counter app that Flutter is sort of famous for. And you'll see here that we have 2 tabs on the preview. Earlier we only had 1 tab, which is web, but now we have Android and web. Within the Android tab, you see a fully functional working Android emulator. This is not a web view. It is not, oh, what the Project IDX engineers have done is they're rendering a web container out with a beveled border. This is not it. It's actually fully functioning Android emulator. If I click the home button, I would see the Android home screen, install apps, and all of those things that I, as a mobile developer, would need. And we also have the web preview, because Flutter, thankfully, also compiles it onto web app. So you can do live debugging for Flutter within the IDE without installing anything. And like I said, for React Native, for React, where I can go and change a line, hit enter, and it'll refresh, the same thing happens here. And this is the other demo that I had planned, that if I go change this purple color to like a blue or an orange color, hit save, and it'll immediately reload and give me a working app right within the IDE without having to install anything. So this is super powerful. So you can install your Flutter dependencies, you can install a working app, you can have a working app in seconds. You can share the web preview with your friends. You cannot share the Android emulator outside of IDX, but you can share the web preview with, let us say, a PM that you're working with, right? Or somebody else you're working with. You can share them this link, hey, check out my app, let me know if there's any feedback, and they can give you feedback, and you can update them and update the code base right away without worrying about hosting or any of those things. So with this, you get a fully functioning mobile environment that is shareable, works right within the IDE without installing anything, ready to go from Project IDX. And like I said, the emulators are real. These are not fake. So you can have a full-fledged emulator. And I want to circle back to the breakpoint debugging somebody shouted. And so for Flutter, we also have fully fledged breakpoint debugging, where you can, if you see, let me zoom in again. So if you see here, what I've done is I've added a breakpoint for counter when I'm doing counter ++, and I also have the printf debugging, obviously, right? But if you hit the breakpoint, it will show you in the call stack that that's where the value of the counter is. So it's super easy to debug, breakpoint debugging, right, for mobile emulators, for mobile applications right within Project IDX. Let me zoom out. Yeah, again, like no setup required, everything is ready to go. So a quick recap, how do we make mobile development easy? We give you Flutter environments, ready to go Flutter environments with real emulators. And these emulators can also be used with not just Flutter, but you can use it to build your Android apps. You can use it for React Native or anything you want. And then you have step-through debugging through an emulator. OK, let's jump to the next topic, which is the power of integrated developer tools. Now, one of the things we spoke about earlier is, hey, before I pull my hair out during debugging, what are the other things I look at? And it's either going through documentation or looking at printf debugging. And where do you do all of that? You do all of that using some kind of a logging setup, right? So if you're building web applications, you will use the Chrome DevTools or any other DevTools, for example, to see those things. So in IDX, this was supposed to be a very fancy animated GIF. I don't know why this is just a static file and such a poor quality, so sorry about that. But what you can see here is, let me zoom in. OK. Is the code readable at all? It's super pixelated, no? OK. Yeah, so if you see here, what I'm trying to do is whenever I'm incrementing the counter, I'm also doing a like console log hello world, what is the count, right? And now if I were to do this on my local environment, what I would do is I'll have a separate tab open, window open with my Chrome DevTools, and that's where I see the logs, plain and simple. But to even avoid that and having another window open, what we do is if I increment the counter in my preview, you'll see here that we have a minimal version of a web console, and that you can see the logs right here. right? And so even small things like this makes the development environment much more productive because you don't have to now worry about windows back and forth. And you can log stuff directly here, right within the IDE. And one of the things that we're working on is if you run into an error, for example, like console.error on exception, AI can help you, hey, this is where the exception came from, help me debug this error, right? So these are some of the things that are possible now with like a web console, right within the IDE. And again, apologies for the pixelated image I had. For some reason, I don't know why the high resolution one is not loading. Okay, so then we come to preview sharing. Like I shared earlier, like a lot of us who are building applications, back end, front end, are sharing this with either our friends or colleagues, or let us say, putting it in a Jira ticket, say this is the link to try it out, right? And in this case, but the biggest challenge there is how do I deploy my app so that somebody can share it or somebody can view it. In Project IDX, we have this idea of like preview sharing. And what that allows you to do is you scan this QR code. Every workspace comes with its own QR code or like a URL. You click this button, you can share this with anybody, even though they are technical, non-technical, and they can click the link and they will see the live app running inside their browser. They don't have to open IDX, they don't have to know what coding is or anything of that sort. Let us say you're building your a friend, his like their portfolio website or something like that. Right? You can share this link with them, they can give you feedback and you can live update, they hit refresh and they see the new updates. And without even worrying about deployment. Now, this is not a mechanism to escape deployment. Obviously, deployment is very different. This is just a developer-oriented setup. While this is the same way, if you have somebody over your shoulder, you can say, hey, check out my screen, check out my laptop. I have built this cool thing, give me feedback. This is that when you're remote and you don't have somebody right next to you, you can share this link with them and they can give you feedback, right? So this makes it super easy to build web applications, get feedback, and iterate, where you don't have to worry about deployment and which cloud provider should I use. The answer is Firebase hosting, but in general, you don't have to worry about any of those things. Yeah, so here, for example, I've shared this link to my personal device, which I've opened in Safari, so I'm not logged into Google, I'm not logged in anything here. I can just click the link and I can see the app. And then when you are like, okay, I want to disable the link, you can also do that, and that will disable the preview sharing for your workspace. Cool. And then there's also ways to wirelessly connect. I don't think I'll not go much deep into this, but what you can do is you can do live mobile debugging. So for example, let us say I want to debug this app in my IDX DevTools. I can open the DevTools within my Project IDX, connect to this app, and then add breakpoint statements or see how it is rendering inside a smaller viewport and a responsive viewport. So that makes things much easier as well. So okay, let's do a quick recap. So we have integrated developer tools that are specific to the framework you're using that helps prevent context switching, and we also provide remote debugging with ease. One cool thing that I wanted to mention, which I don't have unfortunately slides on, is this idea of Lighthouse. Have people heard of Lighthouse? 1, 2, 3. Okay, can somebody shout out what Lighthouse is? Project Lighthouse? Exactly, performance testing for your web applications. And so what that allows you to do is, let us say you're building this web app, and given how popular mobile is for seeing your apps, you want it to load fast, right? And Project Lighthouse is this initiative by the Chrome team to help you debug these performance issues in your app right away. So in Project IDX, we have a button at the top right here, hidden behind these 3 dots, and it runs a Project Lighthouse report for you right in the IDE, so you can see on accessibility, performance, SEO, all those things, how your app is doing. There's one less thing to worry about, and you can iterate it iterate on the app right within the IDE. So we are working on building more developer tools that help you build better apps, more performant apps. But here's a quick summary of what we have today. Okay, and it's 2024. It wouldn't be an IDE if we didn't have AI, right? And so let's quickly talk about how are we using AI to make it easier for you as developers to build better apps and be more productive. So we have a fully integrated version of Gemini right within Project IDX. That means you don't have to go to separate tabs. You don't have to ask Gemini or any other favorite LLM of your choice. You can just ask Gemini right within the IDE for help. Why would you want to do that? Because it has context of your code, right? And it is particularly tuned to, thanks to prompts and thanks to some other engineering, tuned to more developer-oriented workflows where it knows about Project IDX, it knows about the app that you're building, and which makes it much more useful for asking questions. For example, here you can ask it, we have some pre-set up questions, but you can also ask it, start the counter at 1, for example. So let us say in the previous app, I had a counter, right, where it was doing count equal to count plus 1. So if I ask Gemini, start the counter at 1, it will actually tell me, it understands my framework that is React, it understands my app.tsx, and it tells me what line do I have to change to make that change. I can also ask it questions on, hey, what does this file do? Or what does that file do? And all of those things right within the IDE, so it makes it super useful. It saves you a Google search or Stack Overflow search or documentation update when you are building. It also helps you fix trivial errors. For example, in this case, let me zoom in again. Sorry, the font is too small. Okay, so if you see here, I have a function called reverse string, which takes a string of type string and splits and reverse it. And so if I give it, if I call reverse string with reverse string 1 to 3, you can guess what the error is, right? It's TypeScript. So the error is, it's not a string. And I can basically ask AI what the error is and it will fix it for me. So for example, for simple fixes, you can just ask AI to fix the error. Let me see if I have a screenshot of how I do that. Let me zoom out. Yeah, so sorry, no screenshot. I think there was an animation that did not get rendered in the PDF. So you can Command-Shift-P, say fix the error, and it'll go ahead and change 1, 2, 3 and put it in quotes, and it fixes your error without even telling what the error is, right? And so for these kind of simple things, even for non-trivial tasks, I would use it. And obviously, as Gemini and as LLM models improve, their performance gets better and better. If you're in the previous talk, always remember LLMs do hallucinate, right? So use that with caution. But depending on the use case, sometimes it works very, very well. And obviously, it'll only get better from here. Okay, so for example, here, I can also, this is a new thing that we're trying out. It's called Super Chat. That's our sort of internal code name. But externally, it's called Interactive Chat. And I think somebody was using Cursor here, I think you, yeah. So this is now being used in almost all AI support editors. But what it can do is I can ask it to run unit tests. It can know based on your project configuration how to run unit tests, and it'll tell me the right command. It'll ask you, hey, can I run this command? And you're like, sure, run this command. And it'll run it for you. So you can ask it to make changes. So for example, here's a sum function. Like I can go to an empty file and I can say, add a function that sums two numbers. It'll give me a function, it'll export it, and it'll say, should I make this change? You can say, yes, make the change, and it'll go ahead and make the change while showing you the diff right away, right? And you can then ask it, hey, generate a unit test for this file, and it'll generate the unit test for this file. So this is super useful for generating test scaffolding, generating documentation, running tests, figuring out errors and helping you debug, or if you want to look up documentation, how do I do this in X or how do I do this in Y? For a lot of those things, it's super useful. So quick recap. So we have integrated AI that allows you to chat with Gemini right within the IDE. It understands your code base and your framework, so it gives you answers that are specific to your context. And then it integrates also with dev tools to give you more suggestions when needed. So, okay, so let's do a quick summary of where we have 7 minutes left. I want to open the last 5 minutes for questions. So we have fast, fearless debugging. We have reproducible and shareable environments. You can summon mobile emulators, both for Android, sorry, iOS is incorrect. Integrated dev tools that prevent context switching, and then integrated AI that understands your code base and helps you be more productive. So what does the future of dev environments looks like? This is what we feel like the IDX is what we feel the development environment could tomorrow be. So there's and tools that seamlessly connect and hyper focus on the one problem that you're trying to solve. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, let me quickly go over the first slide. I mentioned this and I don't have slides for that one. Let me quickly go through that. Is Google integrations. And you might be scratching your head, why would I want that, right? And so like I said, that you have a preview that you can share, but what if you want to deploy that, right? At some point, you will deploy a real app to make it a real manifestation into the real world. What you can do is we have some Google integrations ready for you to start taking use of, start getting started with. So if I click this button, deploy to Cloud Run, or deploy my web host with Firebase, it'll tell you, it'll kick off an integration for you, and within a few clicks, without going outside of IDX, you will have a fully functioning app that you can share with your friends and family and put it on Hacker News, for example, right? And so in one of the demos I do in generally these kind of talks is I open a brand new IDX template and I act like I don't know any Go, which I actually don't know much. I don't know very little. I create a web server in Go, all using Gemini. And then when the web server is ready, I ask it to write me a Docker file. It generates the Docker file. I test it all within the IDE using Docker run, and then I click on deploy to Cloud Run, and it deploys that app, that Gemini service, sorry, that Go service to Google Cloud Run, and then I can share it to everybody. So that I do all of that without ever leaving IDX or Google.com, and that's some of the power that you have within this environment, within this setup, that you can do full end-to-end development from a brand new framework that you don't know, use AI to help you, and then finally deploy it to Cloud Run or any other hosting provider that you want to get the app up and running. Let me go to the last slide now, and we can open it up for questions. Yeah, like I said, so get started today. Our website is idx.dev. This is a marketing website. It will tell you about everything that we have. We also have a blog where we post a bunch of these technical topics. One of the questions that I get very frequently asked in like DevFest and talks is, hey, how do you build Project IDX, right? And we actually have a post from last year where me and my coworker have this detailed write-up on the tech stack behind Project IDX. This is one of the one of the blog posts, but there are a bunch of other blog posts that you can read. We also have a discourse forum where you can ask us questions. We very heavily engage with the community. We have a roadmap published live, and if you're wondering, hey, Project IDX, what's your roadmap? What are you working on? You can go to idx.dev/roadmap. You can see what are the things that we have in store. But yeah, the main thing to take away is IDX is for developers. We want you to try it out and let us know how we can improve. And yeah, that's it. Sorry, there's supposed to be demo time, but I don't think we have time for demos. Open for questions. Go for it.
Thanks, Prakhar. I have a question. Is there a secure way how to set environment variables?
Can you use the mic, please? Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Prakhar, for this presentation. Is there a secure way how to set up environment variables?
Great question. I think the question is, what is a secure way of setting up environment variables within a Project IDX workspace? And so that's an excellent question. So within the the dev.nix file, let me go through it, come on. Within the dev.nix file, we have a snippet here. Sorry, I can't zoom in. Yeah, within the dev.nix file, we have an ID snippet here called env. And within env, you could add environment variables. Now, we assume that you check in your dev.nix file in your GitHub or any other, in your version control of choice. So obviously, you can't leak keys, right? And so what we have is we have integration with Cloud Secret Manager, and you would use that to basically plug in your environment variables, if that makes sense. So use Cloud Secret Manager for sensitive keys. If it's not sensitive, just put it in the dev.nix file and your environment variables.
Yes, this is pretty amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. The one issue I have is I'm not a Visual Studio Code fan.
Oh.
Is there a way to develop locally, and then like when you want to share with someone, go into there, do your work, and then come back and have the file synced up at all?
100%, yeah. And I think, that is actually one of the main reasons we had when we started. We don't want sort of this vendor lock-in, right? It would suck that if Project IDX is not working, or if I'm on an airplane, I can't work on my code, right? And so think of Project IDX as just another IDE on your local setup. So I would still use use Git or something like that to commit your code. You can obviously do back and forth, run stuff in your IntelliJ, for example, push it to GitHub, have a workspace that pulls from GitHub, and you can share that workspace with your colleague. And you can only use that when you're sort of debugging with them. Otherwise, you're happy with your local setup, so that, yeah, you can use that.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this looks great.
So can you come a wee bit closer? Yeah.
Yeah, this looks great, but the first thing when I fall in love with a Google product, I've been hurt before, so I'm like wondering, is there like a way, like if we needed to pull the ripcord on it, is there like a good export on it? Because it sounds like it's built on a VM, so do you have like the ability to export it to like a container or something?
Excellent question. Yeah. So like I said, that's something that we thought about very early on that we get started. So we also have like a data export mechanism where you can export everything, right? So it is on a VM. Everything that you add in your /home directory lives between your VM restarts. So there's two aspects to it. What is your data in this context? So you have your code base, right? For example, this code base, which I would recommend is you check into GitHub or any other version repository of your choice. And then any stuff that you install in /home will also stay in the VM. But we do have export mechanisms where you can export that data so that you're not logged in. Yeah.
Hello.
Hey.
I was just wondering if we're able to access the environment with SSH. Can we SSH in and out?
Yeah, great question. I think that has come quite a few times on our community. The answer today is no, but we are working on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So you can't go out or in?
No, so in the VM, you can SSH into whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah, any external services, for example.
Okay.
Let us say you have a VM somewhere else, right? You can SSH into that the same way you would do from your local Mac. But
Okay.
from your local Mac, you can't SSH into an IDX VM,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So you showed quite a bit of configurability here, and I really appreciate that. However, I'm missing one thing. Just
Yes.
like in the beginning, you mentioned that you have a massive VMRC file.
Yes.
Some of us have pretty sophisticated VS Code config files.
Yes.
That includes VS Code config itself, and then key bindings, JSON, and so on.
Yes,
Is there
yes.
any way to plug our existing config files into this environment?
Excellent question, yeah. Like I said, this is code OSS. So any settings.json that you bring in will work as is, right? So actually, we do have a project that is going live very shortly. It's called Settings Sync. So let us say you have one workspace where you have your favorite theme, the Monokai, let us say, theme, and you can now be synced across your different workspaces. So TLDR, bring your settings.json in, whether it's .VS Code settings or user settings, they should be persisted and they should work as out of the box.
Wait, do I understand correctly? It is still coming, right? It's not.
Sorry?
Is it part of the existing config file that you're showing right now?
No,
or
no,
will
that
it be a completely different
No,
thing?
this is different. So this is
Yeah.
configuring the environment.
Right.
What you're saying is configuring VS Code.
Yeah,
so
yes.
settings.json is for VS Code. So you have to bring that in separately from your
okay.
local machine and then copy paste. Yeah.
Understood. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Hello. So my question is, how does running and debugging multiple platforms simultaneously look like with IDX? Say, for example, running a front-end app which connects to a back-end service and attaching breakpoints across the code base on both the, say, platforms. How does it look like with IDX?
Yeah, great question. I think, so you're basically asking for a full stack. Let us say you have a Flask app that is rendering a React app, and this React app is talking to a Flask app. How would debugging look like? So there's definitely ways to improve, but on the website, you can still do printf and your DevTools debugging. We currently don't have Python DevTools debugging. That's something that we are working on, and that depends on very much on the framework of choice. But let us say there's a VS Code extension that allows you to do Python breakpoint debugging, then you can use that without any issues. So yeah, depends on the extension that are already provided, and some of the functionality we are still building on that front.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I have another one. Just as a poor student, I'm wondering about like pricing. Do I need like a Gemini
Yeah.
app? Can I work on commercial products on this, licensing, that kind of thing?
Excellent question. So yeah, so currently Project IDX is free, and as part of the free tier, you get access to 5 workspaces. So you get access to 1 workspace, then you sign up for this free program called Developer Profile Program, and after that you get access to 5 workspaces. Those 5 workspaces for you to keep and use. There's no charge for Gemini, but more than 5 workspaces and the pricing around that we're still building. No matter what pricing we come up with, there will always be a generic generous free tier, because we believe that everybody should have access to IDX workspaces, and that is how people try out our products. So even in Firebase, even though Firebase is a paid product, we do have like a generous free tier. Same thing will be true for IDX. And treat this the same way as what you do for anything else. You can use for commercial application for anything else that you want. Yeah. Any other last minute questions? I see somebody walking to the mic.
Yeah, I'm actually quite interested in using this when I get home on
Sweet.
my laptop.
Yeah.
But that kind of brings me to a question about, since it's web-based, is this fully functional on something like Samsung DeX?
You mean a tab?
Like Samsung DeX, when you plug it into a monitor, and then you get kind of like a desktop experience, but it's still on a mobile phone, kind of?
Yeah, as long as you have access to a decent enough mobile browser, it is. Like we have had teammates test it out on various tablets, on like an iPad. So yeah, it should work. But we are still working on an offline mode, so to say, that if you're offline, to get your files synced on your browser in some way to do that. We still haven't cracked that nut yet, because like I was saying earlier, the idea is to use that in conjunction with your local setup. For example, if you always keep files back up on your local Mac, you make those changes, you do a git push, and when you open IDX workspace, whenever you have internet, you do git pull, and you're back in a running environment. But yeah, that is one of the things that we are working on improving right now.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. Last question. We have 20 seconds to go. Okay, cool. I think that's it. Like I said, check out idx.dev. We are very engaging with the community. Write to us on community on our community.idx.dev. Would be great to have you on board, and do check out Project IDX. Thank you all for coming.
Much. I wanted to let you know that it is lunchtime now, and the lunch can be picked up at Platform.